before I pack it in for the night. I've got an event tomorrow, the Risky Rollers event called 40K is the way. It's sort of an introductory event for people who are looking to get into the Warhammer 40K scene, so it's not a hyper competitive event or anything like that. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity to test out these new World Eaters and have a look at what they can do on the tabletop. So basically today, I want to update you on my progress on this new army that I'm putting together. Also run you through the list that I'm planning to take to tomorrow's event, and chat about the event itself in a little bit of detail, because it's a really exciting and really cool event that the Risky Rollers team are putting on. So I guess first I'll run you through the event itself. So it's just like a 3 round regular ass RTT, ITC style event. But there's a huge emphasis on it being an introductory for new players. So teaching them how to use BCP, how to enter scores, how the match play format works, all that sort of stuff. So I'm coming down as a guest to sort of play some games with people and teach them some tricks and teach them some, tournament etiquette and those sorts of things on the day. And then I'm also going to be doing a live seminar from the event, where I'm going to be basically, delivering some training, I guess, to the players at the event. But we're going to be recording it and putting it up on YouTube as well, so that you'll all have access to it as well. And in that training, I'm going to be talking about good questions to ask your opponent during the game. That's the sort of idea. And the idea will be, given that 10th edition is just around the corner, this will be an important message for everybody, but particularly for those new to tournament scenes. Gotchas are a real thing, and this game's infinitely complex, so it's impossible to expect any individual to have a robust understanding of all of the rules. So one of the skills that you can develop to navigate that more effectively is learning what types of questions to ask and how to ask those questions. And that's basically what the training session is going to be about tomorrow. So, the general TLDR is that you want to ask really broad questions that have a very specific answer. And if you can do that, you'll be able to sort of get your opponent to give you the information that you don't already have. So an example of a broad question could be something like, if I deploy here, is there any way that you can charge me turn 1? So that's a very broad question in the way that you're saying, is there any way, right? But it has a very specific answer. It's a yes or a no. So basically, when you ask that question, you're prompting your opponent to go through in their mind all of their rules, all of their sort of understanding, to come up with an answer to the question. So that's what I mean by, ask broad questions, but they have to have specific answers. If you ask a broad question that has a broad answer, well, it becomes quite difficult to, navigate the appropriate way for your opponent to respond, and it becomes a bit more murky. So the key is broad questions with specific answers. So that's the topic that I'll be covering tomorrow at this event. And this is the list that I'm going to be running. So this is also a bit of a hobby update. Obviously, it's not 100% finished yet. Because of the casual nature of the event, I'm not too fussed about losing the 10 points for battle ready. I'm more interested about, a combination of getting this list on the table to test out these new units from the new World Eaters book, and also showing my opponent some tips and tricks along the way. So my plan is to pretty much lose every game, and basically walk my opponent through how to beat me is the idea. But I also want to, test these units and see what their capacity is. So we've got old mate here, Lord Invocatus. Fucking sick model. I love this guy. I'm really happy with him. So you'll notice, as for painting, I've basically base coated everything, and I've done their bases. A lot of people wonder why I do bases first, because it's fairly unconventional. And the reason that I do that is because this army feels a lot closer to finished now, because I've just base coated everything red, given it all a heavy Nuln Oil, and then done their bases. And it feels so close to being finished that it's motivating. It motivates me to keep going. Whereas if none of these bases were done and the models didn't have the wash on them and I was just sitting there painting trimming, I'm going to feel like I'm getting nowhere and I'm not going to be motivated to finish the models. So I like to get those big ticket items done first, go through, paint the model, spray the model whatever color, give them that Nuln Oil to give a bit more definition, a bit more detail to that base coat, and then do the bases to completion, more or less. And then you look at the army and you're like, holy fuck, it's so close to finished. When in reality, you've still got a shit ton of work, but you feel like you're working with something more, robust. But yeah, so that's my old mate Lord Invocatus. Then in our other 3 HQ slots, I've actually taken 3 Masters of Executions. So we've got this lad here, rocking the Butcher's Nails, the big Executioner Axe, and an Eviscerator as well, because there's so many spare bits in the 8-bound kit, I couldn't resist. I've also added some chains to his back to make him look a little bit more World Eatery, just so that he fits in with the rest of the boys. Then the second Master of Executions, again, similar weapon loadouts, and there's some fucking cat fur stuck to him. Similar weapon loadouts, the big axe and the big sword, and similar deal with some chains hanging down from him. I'm a huge fan of that helmet. That's just straight out of the Berserker kit. They come with so many spare bits, it's fucking amazing. And then our third Master of Executions here. So he's got the helm from the other version of the Lord Invocatus, the Juggernaut Lord helm. And then I've given him one of the big chain glaives from the 8-bound kit, because I just think he looks like a fucking mad cunt. And he's got some chains on him too. I also gave him a shoulder pad from the Lord Invocatus kit. And so he's got the exposed flesh on that arm, whereas the other 2 have the more traditional armor plating. So yeah, that's my 3 HQs there and this guy. So I've just got his Warlord trait on him for 1 CP. I haven't given them any upgrades. I think these guys for 65 points are an absolute steal. I think they're a sleeper unit, and they're going to be one of those things that really does unlock the power of the World Eaters. Because for 65 points, they do serious fucking damage, like really high damage. They do 7 attacks, 8 attacks if you get Angron nearby for +1, which obviously this list doesn't have, but you can get them up to 8 attacks. And if you do have Angron, they pair really well with him, because then he can put reroll hits on them, and then they roll, and every 6 to hit is 2 mortal wounds. So you can just go, cool, 8 attacks, rerolling everything, you're going to get a fuck ton of mortal wounds out of 1 65-point character. And anything that doesn't go through as a mortal wound is, high AP, high strength, multi-damage, really, really powerful. And then they have the 6-inch heroic built in. They get rerolls to wound against characters just built into their data sheet. They're fucking crazy. But even worst case scenario, if they charge something, don't kill it, and then just die, it's like, cool, as a 65-point character, I don't care. And that's going to generate me 2 blood tithe points, because being a character and a unit, it's amazing. So just suiciding these guys in is so powerful. Particularly if you take the World Eater's objective, where if you start on an objective marker and then you die, you get drowned in blood and you get a victory point. So if you have these guys on an objective and then you just yeet them out into something, they do a bunch of damage and then die. It's like, cool, well, that counts as a unit drowning in blood. So it's very good. Then we go into our troops slots. So along here, we've got a unit here of 7 Khorne Berserkers, Eviscerator, Champion, and then 5 dudes. And basically those 7 and these 3 characters are going to go in one of those rhinos. And then the second rhino is going to take these other 2 units of 5. And the idea here is basically that's going to provide my opponent a real juicy target, but I think it's going to be overshadowed by what the 8-bound are going to do, to the point where I think these rhinos are going to be able to successfully move up into the midfield and, sort of stage for those turn 2 charges. So that's the idea there, is you got 2 rhinos with 5 and 5 in that one, 7 and 3 in that one. And that you want this 7 in there so that if somebody does blow up the rhino that has these 3 characters in it, they're not all just going to die to the explosion, because if you roll a bunch of 1s, you just remove these casualties here instead of removing your precious characters. Then we have our obligatory 3 Chaos Spawn. I actually only own 2 at the moment, so this Fleshhound is going to be my stand-in for the event. But I did buy another box of 8-bound, that I'm planning to convert all 3 of those 8-bound up into crazy spawns. So instead of it being just a big monster, it's going to look like an 8-bound that has failed the 8 cage, and he's going to be all heavily mutated, and I'm going to keep his chest armor off and the backpack off, but I'm going to have big fucking spikes and shit coming out of his back. I'm saving them till last because basically once I've got all my shit done, I'm going to go through my bits box and figure out what I can do. But yeah, the idea is it's narratively it's going to be like an 8-bound that failed the 8 cage and has just been absolutely molested by those 8 demons. Might have multiple bloodletter heads on it or something, I don't know, I'll figure something out. And then we get into the juice of the list. So all of this sort of stuff is support. The main juicy part is we have here 3 units of 3 exalted 8-bound. So these guys are the fucking absolute tits. I wish this camera would fucking focus. But yeah, these guys are sick as fuck. I'm hoping they're going to do really well. Basically, the idea with them is they're going to deep strike in pretty much in every game. Go for those 8-inch charges, because by the time they arrive in the battlefield, I should have 3 blood tithe points for the +1 to charge. So they're going to deep strike in, go for 8-inch charges, which with a CP reroll, 8-inch charge is something around the high 60s to low 70s in the percentages. So decent chance that at least a couple of them are going to make the charge. And then they just go in and do fucking heavy damage, hopefully trying to pile into and then consolidate into something that's infantry so that I can prevent them from falling back so that they can't be shot, and then hopefully kill my opponent in their turn so that in my turn I'm free to run off and do it again. I think one of these units of 8-bound has the potential to just run away with it and do serious damage. And then last but not least, we have the 3 units over here of 5 regular 8-bound. So these guys are not exalted. They're just your regular 8-bound. And the idea there is one of them is going to go into strategic reserves, and then the other 2 are going to get the pre-game move from the Lord Invocatus. So he's basically going to yeet up the table with his 2 units of 8-bound. Hopefully I go first. Then those 2 units of 8-bound move in further, do a whole bunch of damage. He moves in further, does a whole bunch of damage, absolutely decimates my opponent's lines in that first turn. Meanwhile, a 3rd unit can either come in from strategic reserves turn 1 because of the blood scent rule, or I can hold them back if my opponent hasn't given me any particularly juicy spots to arrive. I can hold them back, and in turn 2 they can come on, and because they count as arriving 1 turn earlier, they or as the battle round is counting as 1.1 turn higher, which is what allows them to come in first turn. That also means that if I come on in turn 2, they treat it as being turn 3, which means they can come on in my opponent's deployment zone, whereas normally that's restricted on turn 2. So whether they come in on turn 1 or turn 2, either way, they get really effective outflank ability. So yeah, basically this chunk of the army here is going to start in strategic reserves. 2 units, Lord Invocatus, pre-game move, and then the Berserkers, the Rhinos, and the champions here, the whatever they're called, Master of Executions, they'll be in the Rhinos, taking the midfield. Meanwhile, the Spawn hold my backfield, screen out my opponent. The other good thing about having these 8-bound in strategic reserves in the Exalted 8-bound is that if I have my Spawn screening at my backfield and then my opponent decides to drop something in behind me, like maybe they shoot one of the Spawn and then deep strike into that section of the board, well, I've got plenty of stuff in reserves that I can bring in to reinforce my backfield. So yeah, that's the list. Pretty excited. It's going to be a lot of fun to play. Haven't got the 8-bound on the table yet. I haven't got the Invocatus on the table yet. I played a game with Angron and a whole bunch of Berserkers the other day, which was a ton of fun. So it'll be really interesting to see how the 8-bound playstyle differs from the Rhino Rush Berserker style. I really enjoyed the Rhino Rush Berserkers. Being able to fight on death for 1 CP is fucking insane. Heroic Interventions was fucking insane. Like, I was doing a lot of crazy stuff, so I really did enjoy that playstyle. So we'll see what happens when it comes to the 8-bound, and we'll see how they go in comparison. And yeah, all right, cool. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. And I will see you guys. I'll give you some updates tomorrow. And yeah, see you around.